Have you ever trusted someone so completely that the thought of their betrayal seemed impossible? What if I told you that right now, someone you trust is keeping a secret that could shatter your entire world? Before we dive into these devastating confessions, hit that subscribe button and smash that, because what you're about to hear will make you question everything you thought you knew about the people closest to you. These are real stories from real people who thought they knew someone until one moment changed everything forever. Some secrets are so dark that once they surface, there's no going back to the way things were. The trust is gone. The relationship is dead. And the person you thought you knew becomes a complete stranger. Let me start with something that'll make your blood run cold. There was a man who spent 16 years with a woman named Anna. 16 years. That's longer than most marriages last these days. He thought he knew her better than anyone in the world. They shared a life, dreams, intimate moments that only two people who truly understand each other can share. But what he didn't know was that Anna had been systematically destroying him from the inside out, piece by piece, year after year. It started so subtly that he didn't even notice. She'd make small comments about his friends, nothing outright hostile, just little observations. Did you notice how Chris never really listens when you talk? Or, I don't think Sarah actually cares about your problems, you know. These comments were like tiny drops of poison, barely noticeable individually, but accumulating into something lethal over time. Pause for a moment and think about your own relationships. Have you ever had someone slowly pull you away from the people who cared about you? It doesn't happen overnight. It's gradual, calculated, and by the time you realize what's happening, you're already isolated. This man didn't realize what was happening until it was too late. Anna had convinced him that his family didn't really understand him, that his friends were toxic, that the only person who truly cared was her. And he believed it, because why wouldn't he? She was his partner, the person who slept beside him every night, who knew his deepest fears and greatest hopes. But Anna's manipulation went far deeper than simple isolation. She weaponized his anxiety and depression. When he'd have moments of doubt about their relationship, she'd threaten to harm herself. She'd stand at the edge of their balcony or hold pills in her hand, tears streaming down her face, saying that life without him wasn't worth living. What was he supposed to do? Leave and risk her death? Stay and sacrifice his own mental health? If you're finding this disturbing, make sure you've hit that like button and subscribed, because these stories only get darker from here. The breaking point came when she attacked him physically. Not once, but repeatedly. She'd fly into rages over the smallest things. A dish left in the sink, a text message he'd sent to his mother. Anything could trigger her, and when the rage took over, she became someone he didn't recognize. She'd scratch, bite, hit him with whatever was nearby, and then, hours later, she'd sob and apologize, saying she didn't know what came over her, that she was just so afraid of losing him. This is the insidious nature of abuse that people don't talk about enough. We imagine abuse as always being straightforward, always being obvious. But real abuse is complicated. It comes wrapped in tears and apologies. It comes from someone who moments before was loving and tender. It messes with your head until you don't know what's real anymore. The man finally left her after one of his friends sat him down and forced him to see the truth. His friend told him that what Anna was doing had a name. It was called intimate partner violence. It was manipulation. It was abuse. And it had been going on for so long that he'd forgotten what a healthy relationship even looked like. When he finally got the courage to leave, Anna was admitted to a psychiatric facility. Even then, even after everything, part of him felt guilty. Part of him wondered if he was abandoning her when she needed him most. That's what 16 years of manipulation does to a person. It rewires your brain until you can't trust your own judgment anymore. Let that sink in for a moment. 16 years of his life stolen by someone he trusted completely. But here's where this story takes an even darker turn. After he left, after he started therapy and began to rebuild his life, he realized something that made his blood run cold. Anna had been isolating him so completely that he had no support system left. His family had drifted away because Anna convinced him they were judgmental. His friends had stopped calling because Anna made every social interaction uncomfortable. His coworkers thought he was distant and cold because Anna demanded he come straight home after work every single day. He looked around at his life and realized he was utterly alone except for Anna. And that had been her plan all along. If you have no one else, you can't leave. If you have nowhere to go, you have to stay. It's a prison built without walls, and the chains are invisible until you try to break free. Comment below if you've ever experienced someone trying to isolate you from people who care about you. Sometimes, just knowing you're not alone in these experiences can make all the difference. Now let me tell you about another confession that's equally devastating, but in a completely different way. There was a man who had been married for over a decade. He had a daughter, a beautiful home, a successful career. To everyone on the outside, his life looked perfect. Picture perfect family photos, vacations to exotic locations, the kind of life that makes people scroll through social media and feel a pang of envy. But behind that perfect facade was a secret that would destroy everything. For an entire year, he had been having an emotional affair with a woman named Amy. Now, some of you might be thinking that an emotional affair isn't as bad as a physical one. But let me tell you something. Sometimes emotional betrayal cuts even deeper than physical infidelity. This man was sharing his deepest thoughts with Amy. His hopes, his fears, his dreams for the future. Things he wasn't sharing with his wife anymore. Every morning he'd wake up, and the first thing he'd do was message Amy. Every night before bed, her face was the last thing he saw on his phone screen. His wife had no idea. She went about her life trusting him completely, never suspecting that her husband's heart had quietly slipped away to someone else. She'd kiss him goodbye in the morning and welcome him home at night, completely unaware that she was living with a ghost. The man she thought she knew had been replaced by someone who was only physically present. And here's the thing that makes this story particularly cruel. The man knew what he was doing was wrong. He knew he was betraying his wife, destroying the foundation of trust their marriage was built on. But he did it anyway, because, as he said, you don't get to choose who you fall in love with. Take a breath and really think about that statement. You don't get to choose who you fall in love with. Is that true? Or is it just an excuse we use when we want to justify hurting the people who trust us? Love isn't just a feeling that happens to you. Love is a choice you make every single day. It's choosing to honor your commitments when someone more exciting comes along. It's choosing to work through difficulties instead of seeking comfort in someone new. This man made his choice, and it wasn't his wife. But then Amy died, suddenly, unexpectedly, and everything fell apart. The man was devastated, but he couldn't grieve openly because no one knew about his relationship with Amy. His wife didn't know. His family didn't know. His co-workers didn't know. So he had to pretend that this death was just the loss of a casual acquaintance, when in reality, he felt like his entire world had crumbled. In his grief, he made a catastrophic mistake. He sent messages to Amy's phone, knowing she'd never receive them. Messages pouring out his love, his devastation, his regret. And someone found those messages. Amy's friend, a man named Tom, went through her phone and discovered everything. The affair was about to be exposed. His career was at risk because Amy was connected to his workplace. His marriage was about to implode. His entire carefully constructed life was teetering on the edge of destruction. And the worst part? He still couldn't bring himself to tell his wife the full truth. Even faced with total ruin, he was trying to figure out how to minimize the damage to his reputation, how to control what people would know about him. If you're still watching, hit that like button and let me know in the comments what you would do in this situation. Would you tell the full truth, even knowing it would destroy everything? Or would you try to minimize the damage? This man was more concerned about managing the narrative than about his wife's right to know the truth. He was worried that if Tom shared everything, his wife would find out just how deep the betrayal went. There were messages between him and Amy that spanned the entire last year of his marriage. Messages that would show his wife that while she was home, taking care of their daughter, making dinner, doing laundry, supporting him emotionally through his stresses at work, he was building a whole separate life with someone else. Think about how his wife will feel when she finds out. And she will find out. Secrets like this always surface eventually. She'll realize that every "I love you" he said to her during that year was a lie. Every time he touched her, held her, made love to her, part of him was somewhere else, with someone else. Their entire relationship will become suspect in her mind. She'll question everything. Was any of it real? Did he ever truly love her? Or was she just the comfortable option, the safe choice, while he saved his real passion for Amy? The devastation of this kind of betrayal doesn't just destroy the present and the future. It reaches backward and corrupts the past too. Every happy memory becomes tainted. Every moment she thought they were building something together becomes a lie she told herself. And their daughter. God, their daughter. How do you explain to a child that daddy destroyed the family because he fell in love with someone else? How does that child ever trust anyone fully again when she's seen that even the people who are supposed to love you most can betray you completely? Let me share another story that shows how trust can be destroyed in a single moment. There was a woman who had dedicated her entire life to protecting her daughter. She was a single mother who had left an abusive relationship and was trying to build a better life. Then she met a man who seemed perfect. He was kind, patient, good with her daughter. He seemed like the answer to everything she'd been hoping for. Her daughter, who we'll call Z, was a quiet, well-behaved child. She rarely caused trouble and seemed to be adjusting well to having this new man in their lives. But then one day, Z came to her mother with a confession that would shatter everything. The man had been touching her inappropriately, hurting her, doing things that no child should ever have to endure. The mother's world stopped. In that moment, every decision she'd made was thrown into question. How could she not have seen it? How could she have brought this monster into their home? How could she have trusted him around her precious daughter? She did what any mother should do. She believed her daughter immediately. She left the man, got a restraining order, went to the police. But leaving wasn't enough. This man didn't just let them go. He hunted them. Those are the exact words the mother used. He hunted them like animals. Subscribe and hit that notification bell, because what happens next is something out of a nightmare. They moved to a new apartment. He found them. They moved again. He found them again. They got a restraining order. He violated it. The mother was hospitalized twice because of his violence. They slept in their car for weeks. They were asked to leave shelters because his presence put everyone else in danger. Finally, desperately, they fled the state because he started targeting the daughter at her school. Can you imagine living like that? Can you imagine looking over your shoulder every single day, knowing that someone who wants to hurt you is out there searching? Can you imagine being that little girl, knowing that this man was still hunting you, still trying to get to you? And through all of this trauma, the daughter had to be brave enough to testify against him in court. This child, who had already endured so much, had to stand up in front of strangers and recount the things he'd done to her. Some of those things were so terrible that she'd never even told her mother. She'd kept them secret, carrying that burden alone, trying to protect her mother from even more pain. During this ordeal, the mother's support system collapsed. Her mother died. Her beloved cat died. The apartment they'd finally found flooded, and they lost everything. This man had stolen their safety, their peace of mind, their ability to live normal lives. He'd stolen years from them that they could never get back. But here's the part that might make you angry. In real life, this man's family and friends still don't believe he belongs in prison. They think the mother ruined his life. They think she's the villain in this story. Even with all the evidence, even with the daughter's testimony, even with a conviction and a 12-year prison sentence, there are people who refuse to believe that this man is a monster. This is why victims of abuse often don't come forward, because even when they do everything right, even when they have proof, even when justice is technically served, there will still be people who doubt them, who blame them, who think they're lying or exaggerating. The mother ended her post by saying that justice was finally served. He'll rot in prison for 12 years, but 12 years isn't forever. In 12 years, he'll get out, and that little girl, who'll be a young woman by then, will have to live knowing he's out there somewhere. The fear will never completely go away. Drop a comment and let me know. Is 12 years enough for stealing a child's innocence and traumatizing her for life? Because personally, I don't think any amount of time could balance those scales. Now let me tell you about a different kind of betrayal, one that's more subtle but perhaps even more insidious. There was a person whose mother died unexpectedly. In the span of just 2 years, they'd lost their sister, their grandma, their aunt, 2 close friends, had a miscarriage, lost their cat, and then their mother. That's an incomprehensible amount of grief for one person to carry. Each loss is its own tragedy, but when they pile up like that, it becomes this crushing weight that makes it hard to breathe, hard to function, hard to find any reason to keep going. The relationship between this person and their mother was special. They described it as being completely in sync, having a bond that went beyond normal parent-child relationships. When the mother died, it wasn't just the loss of a parent, it was the loss of a best friend, a confidant, someone who understood them better than anyone else in the world. Here's what makes this story about trust. For the 2 years leading up to her death, the mother had been having health problems. Nothing seemed terribly serious at first, just the kind of things that happen as people age. But looking back, there were signs, symptoms that should have raised red flags. And the person kept telling themselves that their mother was fine, that it was nothing to worry about, that if something was seriously wrong, the mother would say something. But the mother never said anything. Maybe she didn't want to worry her child. Maybe she was in denial herself. Maybe she just wanted to keep living her life without the shadow of illness hanging over every moment. Whatever her reasons, she kept her suffering private. And then one day, she collapsed. By the time the EMTs arrived, it was too late. The person who wrote this confession kept asking the same question over and over. How did I not see it? We were so close, so in sync. How did I miss the signs that something was seriously wrong? This is a different kind of betrayal than the others I've told you about. The mother wasn't trying to hurt anyone. Her keeping quiet about her health wasn't malicious, but the result was the same. Trust was broken. The person was left feeling like they'd failed, like if they just paid more attention, asked more questions, pushed harder for answers, maybe their mother would still be alive. They wrote that they can physically feel that there is less love for them on earth. Think about that phrase for a moment. Less love on earth. When someone who loves you unconditionally dies, a certain amount of love leaves the universe. No one else will ever love you quite the way a parent does. No one else will ever see you the same way, believe in you the same way, forgive you the same way. This person kept checking their phone, waiting for their mother to text them to come pick her up from the hospital. Even though they knew she was gone, some part of their brain couldn't accept it. Couldn't accept that they'd never get another text, never hear her voice again, never feel her hug them one more time. The trust that was broken here was the implicit belief that the people we love will tell us when something is wrong, that if our parent is dying, they'll say something. We'll have time to say goodbye, to say all the things we've been meaning to say. But life doesn't always work that way. Sometimes people leave without warning, and we're left with nothing but questions and regrets. Make sure you're subscribed, because we're going to explore even darker territory now. Let me tell you about a person who made a post questioning whether they were in the wrong for believing their daughter over a grown man. Just the fact that they had to ask that question tells you something about how society treats people who speak up about abuse. This started when the daughter confided in her parent about something terrible. And instead of immediately believing her, instead of immediately protecting her, the parent second-guessed themselves. They wondered if maybe their daughter was mistaken, if maybe she'd misunderstood something, if maybe the grown man had a reasonable explanation. That hesitation, even though it was brief, is something the parent will probably regret for the rest of their life. Because every second they doubted was a second their daughter had to wonder if her own parent believed her. Every second of hesitation was a crack in the foundation of trust between parent and child. Fortunately, the parent came to their senses quickly and took action. But the fact that they had to fight their own instinct to give the abuser the benefit of the doubt shows how deeply ingrained these patterns are in our society. We're taught to be polite, to not cause scenes, to not ruin someone's reputation with accusations. We're taught that there are two sides to every story, and we should hear both before making a judgment. But sometimes there aren't two sides. Sometimes there's just a child who's been hurt and an adult who hurt them. Sometimes giving the benefit of the doubt to the abuser means failing the victim. The parent wrote about how they were ignorant and naive for second-guessing themselves. They were too harsh on themselves, in my opinion. Because the truth is, most of us would have that moment of doubt. Most of us have been so conditioned to trust authority figures, to believe the best about people, that when we're confronted with evidence that someone we know is a monster, our first instinct is denial. It can't be true. Not him. He seemed so nice. There must be some mistake. But there was no mistake. The man was exactly what the daughter said he was. And once the parent fully accepted that truth and took action, the man's true nature revealed itself. He became violent. He stalked them. He terrorized them to the point where they had to flee their home, their city, their entire state. This is what monsters do when they're cornered. They don't quietly accept the consequences of their actions. They lash out. They try to intimidate their victims into silence. They try to punish anyone who dares to expose them. And here's something that should terrify everyone. This man had people in his life who still don't believe he's guilty. Even after the daughter testified, even after he was convicted, even after he violated restraining orders and committed acts of violence that landed him in prison, there are still people who think the parent is lying, that they ruined an innocent man's life, that they're the real villain in this story. How do you maintain trust in humanity when you see things like this? How do you believe in justice when you know that no matter how much evidence exists, no matter how brave the victim is in coming forward, there will always be people who side with the abuser? If this content is getting to you, remember to leave a like and subscribe for more deep dives into the darkest corners of human behavior. Let me shift gears and tell you about a different kind of trust violation, one that happens in plain sight, but nobody talks about. There was someone who worked for a company for years, giving them their time, their energy, their loyalty. They believed that if they worked hard and did everything right, they'd be taken care of. That's what we're all taught, isn't it? Work hard and you'll be rewarded. Be loyal to your employer and they'll be loyal to you. But then something happened at work, something that had nothing to do with their job performance, but everything to do with their personal life. A situation that should have remained private became public knowledge. And suddenly, everything they'd built, every relationship they'd cultivated, every bit of trust they'd earned, all of it was at risk. The person reached out to their boss, someone they'd worked with for years. They called him Dick, which might have been his actual name, or might have been what they called him behind his back. Either way, this was someone the employee trusted, someone they thought would have their back in a crisis. When the employee explained that they were in trouble and needed to lie low for a few days, Dick's response was about trust. He said he needed to be able to trust his employees. He needed to know they were being team players. The implication was clear. If you want my help, I need to know you're loyal to me. So the employee lied. They made up a story about a roommate who was a drug dealer, about threats to their safety, about needing protection. And Dick believed it, or at least pretended to. He agreed to keep quiet about where the employee was. He agreed to cover for them at work. But here's the thing about trust built on lies. It's not real trust at all. It's a house of cards waiting for the slightest breeze to knock it down. The employee had just learned that to maintain their job, to keep their livelihood, they had to deceive someone they'd worked with for years. They had to present a false version of reality because the truth was too messy, too complicated, too likely to result in judgment. This is the trust we build with employers. We show them the version of ourselves they want to see. We hide our struggles, our personal problems, our mental health issues. We pretend everything is fine, even when we're falling apart, because we know that vulnerability is punished in the workplace. The employee ended the call with Dick feeling relieved that they still had a job to come back to. But what kind of job is it really if you have to lie to keep it? What kind of relationship is it if honesty means losing everything? Comment below if you've ever had to hide your true situation from your employer because you knew being honest would cost you your job. Now, let me tell you about someone whose trust in reality itself was shattered. This person's experience is different from the others because it doesn't involve betrayal by another person. Instead, it's about discovering that your perception of reality might not be reliable. They found themselves in a situation that didn't make sense. They were in an apartment building they didn't recognize, running from something terrifying with a stranger beside them. As they escaped and the adrenaline started to fade, they realized something horrifying. They didn't live in an apartment. They owned a house, a blue colonial with specific details they could picture clearly. So how did they end up in this strange building? Who let them in? And most chillingly, what were they running from? This is perhaps the most disturbing kind of trust violation because it's not about trusting other people. It's about whether you can trust your own mind. If you can't rely on your own memory, your own perception of reality, then what can you rely on? There are several possible explanations for this experience. Maybe it was a dream that felt real. Maybe it was a dissociative episode brought on by trauma or stress. Maybe it was something else entirely, something we don't have words for yet. But regardless of the explanation, the experience itself is terrifying. Imagine not knowing if your memories are real. Imagine looking around and not recognizing where you are or how you got there. Imagine the fundamental uncertainty of not being able to trust the basic facts of your own existence. This is what happens to people who've experienced severe trauma. Their brains develop coping mechanisms that sometimes involve disconnecting from reality. It's a survival strategy, a way of escaping situations that are too painful or too frightening to process. But once your brain learns how to do this, once it discovers it can create these gaps in your memory and perception, it can start happening at unexpected times. The person described the door frame splintering behind them, the sound like a gunshot. They described running until concrete turned to asphalt, until the sky bled dawn. Those are vivid, specific details, but mixed in with those details is the confusion about where they are, the realization that something fundamental doesn't add up. This is why trauma is so insidious. It doesn't just hurt you in the moment. It changes how your brain works. It makes you question reality itself. And once you can't trust your own perceptions, you're adrift in a world that suddenly seems much less stable than you thought. Hit that like button if you're still with me, because we're going deep into some truly disturbing territory now. Let me tell you about a man who discovered his roommate knew things about him that no one should know. This man had made mistakes in his past. We all have. But his mistakes were the kind that would destroy his current life if they came to light. He'd told his girlfriend Jen about some of them, trusting that she'd keep his secrets. But there were other things, darker things, that he'd never told anyone. Then his roommate started saying things, subtle things at first, comments that were just a little too perceptive, observations that cut a little too close to the truth. The man tried to brush it off, tried to tell himself he was being paranoid, but the comments kept coming, getting more and more specific. Finally, the man came home one day to find his girlfriend Jen furious with him. She told him to get out, to never contact her again, or she'd call the police. And the man knew. Somehow, his roommate had told Jen something true, something so damaging that Jen wanted nothing more to do with him. The man confronted his roommate, or tried to, but his roommate just stood there, back turned, speaking in a voice that the man described as terrible and dispassionate, almost artificial. The roommate said things like, "You should have been honest with Jen years ago, and it weighs heavily, so very heavy." Think about how violating that must feel. To have someone know your deepest secrets, the things you're most ashamed of, the mistakes you've worked so hard to move past. To have them weaponize that knowledge against you, destroying your relationship with the person you love most. But here's what makes this story even more disturbing. The roommate said, "It would be best if you confessed. Then I will go now. I have some things to see too, but I'm very willing to listen when I return." Who talks like that? It's not normal human speech. It's formal, detached, almost scripted. The man described feeling like he was in a room with a temperamental nuclear bomb. Every muscle in his body was tense. He felt hot, flushed, like his body was responding to a threat, even though the roommate wasn't being physically threatening. This is what psychological terror feels like. When someone has power over you, when they know things about you that could destroy your life, you become hyper-aware of them. Every word they say carries weight. Every silence feels loaded with meaning. You're constantly on edge, constantly trying to figure out their intentions, constantly bracing for the next revelation. The man packed a bag, trying to be quiet, trying not to provoke whatever was happening, and his roommate, without even looking at him, knew he was planning to leave, knew he was trying to escape, and warned him that leaving wouldn't be a smart choice. How did the roommate know about the man's secrets? How did he know what to tell Jen to turn her against him? How did he know the man was packing to leave without even looking? The man never gives us those answers. Maybe he doesn't know them himself. Maybe some violations of trust are so complete, so total, that understanding how they happened doesn't really matter anymore. All that matters is that your life has been turned inside out, your secrets exposed, your relationships destroyed. Subscribe and hit that bell if you want to see more content exploring the darkest aspects of human behavior and betrayal. Let me tell you now about someone who experienced multiple devastating losses in a very short time, each one compounding the trauma of the one before. In just 2 years, this person lost their sister, their grandma, their aunt, 2 close friends, had a miscarriage, lost their beloved cat, and then lost their mother. Each of these losses is significant on its own. Together they create a cascade of grief that's almost impossible to process. The sister's death came first, then the grandma, then the aunt. With each loss, the person probably told themselves they were getting through it, that they were handling it okay, that time would heal the wound. But before any wound could heal, another one opened up. 2 friends gone. Then the miscarriage, which carries its own special kind of grief, the loss of a future that will never be, a child who will never exist. Then their cat died. Some people might not understand grieving for a pet the way you'd grieve for a person, but anyone who's loved an animal knows that bond is real and deep. That cat had been a constant in their life when everything else was changing and falling apart. That cat didn't judge, didn't need explanations, just loved them unconditionally. And then that source of comfort was gone too. And finally, the mother. The person who had presumably been helping them through all these other losses. The person they could call when the grief became too much. The person who understood because she was grieving too. Gone. The person wrote that they can physically feel there is less love for them on earth now. With each death, a little more love disappeared from their world. And after losing so many people in such a short time, they were left feeling untethered, like they might just float away because there wasn't enough love anchoring them to the world anymore. They kept checking their phone, waiting for their mom to text. Even though they knew she was dead, some part of them couldn't accept it. Couldn't accept that there would be no more texts, no more phone calls, no more moments of connection. This is what cumulative grief does. It doesn't give you time to recover between blows. It just keeps hitting you until you don't know which way is up anymore, until you can't remember what it feels like to not be grieving, until sorrow becomes your baseline emotional state, and anything else feels strange and temporary. The trust that was violated here isn't about betrayal but by another person. It's about the trust we all have, deep down, that life will be basically fair, that we won't lose everyone at once, that we'll have time to recover between tragedies, that the universe won't just keep taking and taking until there's nothing left. But sometimes the universe does exactly that. Sometimes loss piles on top of loss until you're buried under the weight of it. And the hardest part is knowing that you have to keep going anyway. You have to wake up tomorrow and the next day and the day after that, carrying all this grief because life doesn't stop just because you're breaking. Leave a comment and let me know, how do you keep going when grief becomes too heavy to carry? Because I genuinely want to know how people survive this kind of cumulative trauma. Now, let me tell you about a betrayal that happened slowly, over 16 years, so gradually that the victim didn't realize what was happening until it was almost too late. Anna seemed perfect at first. She was attentive, caring, interested in every aspect of her partner's life. She wanted to know everything about him, his past, his fears, his dreams. He thought it was love. He thought it meant they had a deep connection. But what Anna was actually doing was gathering ammunition. She learned which of his friends he valued most and found ways to turn him against them. She learned which family members he was closest to and created conflicts with them. She learned his insecurities, and instead of helping him overcome them, she reinforced them, made them worse, until he was completely dependent on her for validation. When he'd try to make plans with friends, Anna would have a crisis, a panic attack, a threat of self-harm, something that made it impossible for him to leave. At first, he canceled plans occasionally, thinking he was being a good partner by prioritizing her needs. But gradually, the cancellations became more frequent until his friends stopped inviting him to things because they knew he'd just cancel anyway. Anna was careful never to explicitly forbid him from seeing people. That would have been too obvious, too easy to identify as controlling behavior. Instead, she made every social interaction so difficult, so fraught with drama and consequences, that it was easier for him to just stay home with her. And over time, staying home with Anna became his entire world. This is what coercive control looks like. It's not always about physical restraint or explicit threats. Sometimes it's about making the cage so comfortable that you don't realize you're trapped until you try to leave. The man finally realized what had happened when a friend staged an intervention. The friend pointed out that he hadn't seen his family in months, that he'd lost touch with everyone who used to matter to him, that his entire life revolved around Anna and her needs. The friend used words like intimate partner violence and psychological abuse, and at first, the man resisted. Anna wasn't abusing him. She loved him. She needed him. She'd die without him. Right? Wrong. What Anna had done was create a situation where the man felt responsible for her well-being to the point where he sacrificed his own. That's not love. That's parasitism. When he finally left, Anna was hospitalized. And even then, even after everything, he felt guilty. Because that's what abuse does. It makes you feel like you're the one causing harm when you try to protect yourself. The man wrote about how it felt like ripping his own arm off to leave Anna. That's the perfect metaphor. When someone has become so entwined with your identity that leaving them feels like mutilating yourself, you know the relationship was unhealthy. In a healthy relationship, both people remain themselves. They don't merge into one entity where neither can survive without the other. 16 years of his life stolen by someone who claimed to love him but was actually systematically destroying him. And the saddest part? He still wasn't sure if he was angry with her. Part of him still wanted to forgive her, still wanted to see things from her perspective, still wanted to believe that somewhere under all the manipulation, she actually cared about him. That's the legacy of long-term psychological abuse. It doesn't end when you leave. It stays with you, making you doubt your own judgment, making you second-guess your decision to protect yourself, making you wonder if maybe you were the problem all along. Make sure you're subscribed, because I'm about to tell you the most disturbing story yet. There was someone who worked a regular job at a fast food place. Nothing fancy, just a job to pay the bills. They had a new roommate who seemed strange but harmless at first. A little odd, a little too quiet, but not threatening. Just off somehow in a way that's hard to put into words. Then things started happening. Small things at first. The roommate would make comments that were just a little too insightful. He seemed to know things about the person's past, about their relationship with their girlfriend Jen, about mistakes they'd made that they'd never discussed with anyone. The person tried to brush it off. Maybe they'd mentioned these things and forgotten. Maybe the roommate was just perceptive. Maybe it was all just coincidence. But the comments kept coming, getting more and more specific, more and more impossible to explain away. Then one day, the person came home to find the roommate had been to see Jen. And Jen was furious, telling the person to get out and never contact her again, or she'd call the police. Whatever the roommate had told her, it was devastating enough to instantly destroy a relationship. The person confronted the roommate, but the roommate's response was chilling, speaking in a voice described as terrible and dispassionate, almost artificial. The roommate said things like, "You should have been honest with Jen years ago, and it weighs heavily, so very heavy." Who talks like that? It's not normal human speech. It's formal, detached, scripted almost. Like someone reading lines or performing a role rather than having an actual conversation. The person packed a bag, planning to leave and stay somewhere else until they could figure things out. And without even turning around, without even looking, the roommate knew. He said, "You want to leave?" That wouldn't be a very smart choice. How did he know? The person was being as quiet as possible, trying not to draw attention. But somehow the roommate knew exactly what was happening. Then the roommate said something that made the person's blood run cold. "It would be best if you confessed. Then I will go now. I have some things to see too, but I'm very willing to listen when I return." There's something deeply wrong about that statement. The phrasing is all wrong for normal human interaction. "I have some things to see too," instead of "I have things to do." "I'm very willing to listen," instead of "I'm here if you want to talk." It's like someone who learned human language from a textbook but never quite grasped how people actually communicate. The person ended their post there, but the implications are terrifying. Who was this roommate? How did he know things that no one should know? Why did he speak in such an unnatural way? What did he mean by, "I have some things to see too"? Some secrets we keep are meant to stay buried. Sometimes there are good reasons why we don't tell anyone about certain parts of our past. And when someone excavates those secrets without permission, when they use them as weapons to destroy our lives, it's a violation that goes beyond simple betrayal. If you're still watching, hit that like button and leave a comment telling me what you think was really going on with this roommate. Because honestly, I don't have a good explanation for this one. Now, as we near the end, I want to talk about a different kind of trust violation. This one involves a justice system that fails the people it's supposed to protect. A mother and daughter fled an abuser. They did everything right. They got restraining orders. They went to the police. They cooperated fully with the legal system. The daughter was brave enough to testify, to recount in detail the abuse she'd suffered. and the abuser was convicted. Justice was served, right? Except it wasn't. Not really. Because even with a conviction, even with the man in prison, his family and friends still don't believe he's guilty. They think the mother made it all up. They think she destroyed an innocent man's life. They think she's the villain. The mother and daughter did everything society tells victims to do. They came forward. They testified. They provided evidence. They got a conviction. And still, they're not believed by a significant number of people. This is why so many victims of abuse never report it. Because even when the system technically works, even when justice is theoretically served, you still have to live with people thinking you're a liar. You still have to deal with the abuser's supporters attacking your character. You still have to carry the weight of knowing that no matter what you do, some people will side with the person who hurt you. The man got 12 years in prison. 12 years for stealing a child's innocence, for traumatizing her in ways that will affect her for the rest of her life, for hunting her and her mother like animals when they tried to escape. Is 12 years enough? Of course not. But it's what the system gave them, so they have to accept it as justice. And in 12 years, he'll be released. And that little girl, who'll be a young woman by then, will have to live knowing he's out there. The fear will never completely disappear. She'll always be looking over her shoulder, always wondering if today is the day he finds her again. That's not justice. That's just a temporary reprieve. This is the trust violation that society inflicts on victims of abuse. We tell them to come forward, promise them protection, assure them that the system will keep them safe, and then we fail them. Over and over again, we fail them. Subscribe if you want more content that doesn't shy away from uncomfortable truths about how our systems fail the most vulnerable. Let me leave you with one final thought about trust and betrayal. Every single story I've told you today has a common thread. Someone trusted another person completely. They gave someone else power over them, whether it was emotional power, physical power, or the power that comes from knowing secrets. And that trust was violated. But here's the thing, we can't go through life never trusting anyone. That's not living, that's just surviving. Trust is necessary. It's what allows us to form connections, to build relationships, to create communities. Without trust, we're all just isolated individuals, afraid to let anyone get close. So how do we balance the need for trust with the reality that people can and will betray us? I don't have a perfect answer, but I think it starts with understanding that trust isn't all or nothing. You don't have to tell someone all your secrets at once. You don't have to make yourself completely vulnerable immediately. Trust can be built gradually, tested in small ways before you risk everything on it. And when trust is broken, when someone betrays you, it's not your fault. You're not stupid for trusting them. You're not naive for believing in them. You're human. And being human means sometimes we get hurt. The people who wrote these confessions shared their stories because they needed to be heard. They needed someone to witness their pain and say, yes, that happened. Yes, it was real. Yes, you have every right to feel betrayed. So if you're watching this and you've experienced betrayal, if someone has violated your trust in ways that have left permanent scars, I want you to know that your pain is valid. Your anger is justified. And the fact that you're still here, still breathing, still trying to move forward despite everything, That makes you stronger than you realize. Comment below and tell me your story if you feel comfortable sharing. Sometimes just saying it out loud, even anonymously on the internet, can help start the healing process. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, share this video with them. Let them know they're not alone in their pain. Before I go, make sure you've hit that subscribe button and turned on notifications so you don't miss future content. Hit that like button if this video resonated with you. And remember, trust is precious. Guard it carefully, but don't let fear of betrayal keep you from connecting with others. Because at the end of the day, connection is what makes life worth living. Even knowing we might get hurt, even knowing that trust can be broken, we keep trying. We keep reaching out. We keep hoping for something better. And that's not weakness. That's courage. Thanks for watching. Stay safe out there. And remember, the people who matter will prove themselves trustworthy through their actions, not just their words. Trust, but verify. Love, but protect yourself. Connect, but maintain boundaries. That's how we survive in a world where trust can be shattered forever with a single confession. Until next time.